The air in the Washington conference hall crackled with unease. Hundreds of delegates from around the world sat in rows, their eyes fixed on the stage where the new Pope, Robert Francis Prevost, stood at a polished podium. His white robes gleamed under the lights, and his voice, steady and warm, spoke of unity and healing. But not everyone was charmed. In the front row, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, her fingers gripping a folder stuffed with papers. Her jaw was tight, her eyes burning with something fierce. Jasmine had come to the Global Peace Summit as a delegate, but she wasn't here to clap politely. She'd spent weeks digging into Robert's past, back when he was a bishop in Peru. What she found made her blood boil. Reports of abuse in his diocese, whispers of priests moved quietly to new towns, and complaints buried under stacks of paperwork, all while Robert climbed the church's ranks. Now, as he preached peace to the world, Jasmine saw a liar in holy robes. On stage, Robert paused, sipping water. The crowd applauded his latest line about forgiveness. Jasmine shot to her feet, her voice slicing through the room like a blade. "Forgiveness? You've got some nerve talking about forgiveness, Your Holiness." The hall fell silent. Heads turned. Robert's smile froze, his eyes narrowing as he spotted her. "Congresswoman Crockett, this is a summit for peace. Please, sit down," he said, his tone sharp but controlled. Jasmine didn't budge. She held up her folder, papers trembling in her hand. "Peace? How about justice? I've got proof you ignored cries for help in Peru. You let predators walk free to save your precious church's name." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Delegates whispered, some clutching their programs, others reaching for their phones. The moderators, two nervous diplomats, tried to intervene, but Jasmine's voice drowned them out. "You're no saint. You're a fraud." Robert's face tightened, his knuckles white on the podium. He leaned into the microphone, his voice low but venomous. "You're out of line, Congresswoman. You know nothing about my work in Peru. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further." The crowd stirred, some nodding in support of the Pope, others murmuring at Jasmine's boldness. But she wasn't fazed. She stepped closer to the stage, her heels clicking on the floor, her eyes locked on his. The tension in the hall was suffocating. Delegates shifted in their seats, unsure whether to cheer or shrink back. Jasmine opened her folder, pulling out a single page. "This is a letter from a mother in your diocese, begging you to stop a priest who hurt her son. You didn't answer her. You moved that priest instead." She waved the paper like a flag, her voice shaking with rage. "How many others did you ignore, Robert? How many lives did you ruin?" Robert's calm mask cracked. He slammed a hand on the podium, the thud echoing through the speakers. "You're twisting the truth to smear me. I served the poor, the broken. I built schools, hospitals. You're just a loudmouth chasing headlines." His words stung, but Jasmine laughed, sharp and cold. "Oh, I'm loud, all right. And I'm not stopping until the world knows who you really are." The moderators rushed forward, pleading for order, but the crowd was alive now, buzzing with shock and excitement. Jasmine stood her ground, her folder still raised, daring Robert to respond. He glared at her, his chest heaving, then leaned into the microphone again. "You want to fight, Congresswoman? Be careful what you wish for. You don't know the whole story." His voice was a growl, a warning that sent a chill through the room. Sweat beaded on the foreheads of the summit organizers as they ushered Jasmine Crockett and the Pope into a small meeting room. The door clicked shut, muffling the buzz of the conference hall where delegates still whispered about the explosive scene. The room was stark, with a long table, a few chairs, and walls that seemed to press in. Jasmine stood at one end, her folder of papers clutched tight, her eyes blazing. Robert, his white robe slightly creased, paced at the other end, his face a storm of anger and defiance. One of the organizers, a wiry man with glasses, cleared his throat. "Please, let's talk calmly. This summit is about peace." "Jasmine?" cut him off, her voice sharp as a whip. Calm? He's been dodging the truth for years. I'm not here to sip tea with a liar. She slapped her folder on the table, papers spilling out. Robert stopped pacing, his fists clenched. You're a disgrace, Crockett, dragging up old rumors to make yourself look righteous. You're no hero, just a power-hungry politician. Accusation stung, but Jasmine's laugh was cold, echoing off the walls. She pulled a single sheet from her pile, holding it up like a weapon. This isn't a rumor. It's a signed statement from a man in Peru. He was a boy when your priest hurt him. He wrote to you, begging for help. You sent him a form letter, and did nothing. The organizers gasped, exchanging nervous glances. Robert's face paled, but his voice was a snarl. You don't understand what it was like. I was one man fighting a broken system. I helped thousands. Jasmine stepped closer, her heels clicking on the tile, her words dripping with scorn. Helped? You protected monsters to keep your career clean. You chose power over people. The room felt smaller, the air thick with their rage. Robert leaned across the table, his eyes burning. And you? You're using that man's pain to climb the ladder. You don't care about him. You just want votes. The organizers tried to intervene, their voices weak against the shouting, but neither listened. The weight of their words hung heavy. Jasmine flipped through her folder, pulling out another document, her hands steady despite her fury. Here's a memo you signed, moving that priest to a new town. You knew what he did, Robert. You knew. Her voice cracked, not with weakness, but with raw anger. The organizers froze, their eyes darting to Robert. He slammed his hand on the table, the sound like a gunshot. I made hard choices. You think you're pure? You've never had to decide who to save. Jasmine's chest heaved, her breath sharp. She leaned in close enough to see the sweat on his brow. I'd never save a predator over a child. You're not a leader. You're a coward hiding in holy robes. Robert's face twisted, his voice a low growl. Keep pushing, Congresswoman. You'll regret it. I've faced worse than you. The threat landed hard, but Jasmine didn't flinch. She gathered her papers, her movements sharp, deliberate. The organizers pleaded for calm, their voices trembling, but Jasmine was done. She turned to the door, her words slicing through the room. I'm taking this to the world, Robert. Your secrets won't stay buried. She yanked the door open, the noise of the hall flooding in, and stormed out. Robert stood frozen, his breathing ragged as the organizers scrambled to follow her. The room felt empty, but the fight was far from over. Sunlight glared off the steps outside the Washington Conference Hall, where a sea of reporters jostled for position. Microphones bristled like thorns, cameras flashing as Jasmine Crockett stood at a makeshift podium. Her face was stone, but her eyes burned with purpose. The crowd, a mix of journalists, summit delegates, and curious passers-by, hummed with anticipation. Word of her clash with the Pope had spread like fire, and now she was ready to fan the flames. Jasmine tapped the microphone, her voice cutting through the morning air. I'm here to tell the truth about Robert Francis Prevost. He's no holy man. He's a man who buried cries for help to protect his career. She held up her folder, now a symbol of her fight, and the crowd leaned in. Reporters scribbled furiously, their questions already forming. But before Jasmine could continue, a ripple ran through the throng. Heads turned, voices hushed. Robert, in his white robes, pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of fury. The reporters parted, stunned, as he climbed the steps. You've gone too far, Crockett, he bellowed, his voice raw. This is a circus, and you're the clown. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others jeering. Jasmine didn't flinch. She stepped from the podium, meeting him face to face, her voice icy. A clown? At least I'm not a coward who let children suffer. The words hit like a slap, and the crowd roared, feeding off their rage. Robert's hands shook, but he forced a sneer. "You're lying to these people. Those papers are fake, and you know it. You're just a politician desperate for attention." The accusation sparked murmurs among the reporters, but Jasmine was ready. She pulled a small device from her pocket, holding it high. "Fake? Then explain this." She pressed play, and a crackling voice filled the air. A woman from Peru, her words choked with grief, pleading with Robert to stop a priest who hurt her son. The call ended with Robert's cold reply. "We'll handle it internally." Silence gripped the crowd, broken only by the click of cameras. The woman's pain hung heavy, and eyes turned to Robert. His face drained of color, his mouth opening, then closing. Jasmine pressed her advantage, her voice booming. "You heard it! He knew, and he did nothing. This is your Pope, hiding behind his robes." The crowd erupted, some shouting support for Jasmine, others hurling insults at Robert. Reporters surged forward, their questions a chaotic wave. Robert raised his hands, desperate to regain control. "She's twisting everything. I was trying to fix a broken system. You're all being fooled by her lies." But his voice cracked, and the crowd sensed weakness. A reporter shouted, "Did you ignore that woman's call?" Another yelled, "How many victims did you silence?" Robert's eyes darted, his composure fraying. Jasmine stepped closer, her words sharp as knives. "You can't talk your way out of this, Robert. The truth is out, and it's ugly." The steps felt like a battlefield, the air thick with hostility. Onlookers waved signs, some scrawled with "Justice," others with "Defend the Pope." Jasmine turned to the crowd, her voice rising above the chaos. "This man betrayed trust. He doesn't deserve your faith." The cheers were deafening, a tide turning in her favor. Robert's shoulders sagged, but his eyes still burned with defiance. "You'll pay for this, Crockett," he muttered, low enough for only her to hear. She smiled, unflinched. "I'm just getting started." The grand hall glowed under chandeliers, packed with delegates for the summit's closing ceremony. Television cameras swept the room, broadcasting live to millions. Robert Francis Prevost stood at the podium, his white robes crisp but his face strained. The weight of the day's scandal clung to him, yet he spoke of hope, his voice steady, as if he could still salvage his name. The audience listened, some nodding, others skeptical, their whispers a low hum beneath his words. Jasmine Crockett watched from the wings, her heart pounding with resolve. She wasn't on the program, but she'd fought her way backstage, a plan burning in her mind. Beside her stood a man in his 30s, his face weathered but strong. His name was Miguel, a Peruvian who'd suffered as a boy under a priest Robert had shielded. His presence was her final weapon, and she was ready to wield it. As Robert's speech neared its peak, Jasmine gave Miguel a nod. They stepped into the light. The crowd stirred as Jasmine marched to the stage, Miguel at her side. Robert's voice faltered, his eyes widening. "This is outrageous," he snapped, gripping the podium. "Security, remove them." But Jasmine was faster, grabbing a microphone from a stunned aide. "Not this time, Robert," she shouted, her voice booming through the hall. "You don't get to hide anymore. This man deserves to be heard." The audience leaned forward, their breaths held, sensing a storm about to break. Miguel stepped up, his hands steady despite the spotlight. His voice was quiet but piercing. "I was 12 when a priest in your diocese hurt me. I told my mother. She wrote to you begging for help. You ignored us. You moved that priest, and he hurt others." The hall fell silent, the weight of his words crushing. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every tremble in Robert's face. Jasmine turned to him, her eyes blazing. "You let this happen, Robert. You chose silence over justice." Robert's composure shattered. He leaned into his microphone, his voice a desperate snarl. "You're dragging this man out for your own gain, Crockett. You're the monster here, not me." The crowd gasped, but Miguel raised a hand, silencing them. "No," he said, staring at Robert. "You failed me. You failed all of us." His words landed like blows, and the audience erupted, some shouting, "Shame!" others clapping for Miguel's courage. Jasmine seized the moment, her voice rising like thunder. "This is your legacy, Robert. A trail of pain you swept under your robes. You're no leader. You're a fraud." The crowd roared, their cheers shaking the hall. Robert's face twisted, his hands shaking as he tried to respond. "I did my best. You're all judging me without knowing the truth." But his voice was drowned out by boos, the tide turning against him for good. The delegates stood, many joining the chant of "Justice," led by a group near the front. Miguel stood, tall, his eyes locked on Robert, who seemed to shrink under the glare. Jasmine stepped closer, her final words cutting deep. "The world sees you now, Robert. Your secrets are done." She turned to Miguel, placing a hand on his shoulder, then faced the crowd, her head high. The applause was deafening, a wave of support that carried her off the stage. Robert stood alone, the cameras still rolling, his face a mask of defeat. Delegates turned away, some whispering about investigations, others about justice. Jasmine and Miguel walked through the crowd, their steps firm, their victory clear. The hall buzzed with energy, the story of their triumph already spreading. For those watching at home, the truth was undeniable. Jasmine had exposed a lie, and the world would never forget.